One of the strangest experiences in adult life is realizing you no longer feel connected to the person you used to be. Not suddenly, not dramatically. It happens slowly, quietly. You wake up one day and notice that the things that once excited you barely reach you emotionally anymore. Conversations feel different. Music feels different. Even your own thoughts sound unfamiliar somehow. And what makes the experience disturbing is that there usually isn't one catastrophic event you can point to and say, "There, that's where I changed." It's subtler than that. Human beings often imagine identity as something stable, a fixed core. But psychologically, that isn't really how people work. Most of who you think you are is actually a collection of emotional patterns, memories, coping mechanisms, ambitions, fears, and relationships constantly evolving beneath your awareness. And sometimes life changes those structures faster than your conscious mind can process. So outwardly, you continue functioning. You go to work. You answer messages. You laugh when appropriate. You continue participating in your routines. But internally, something feels displaced, like your mind is standing half a step behind your own life, trying to catch up to who you've become. And I think a lot of people are experiencing that right now without having language for it. Because modern life changes people psychologically at an unnatural speed. Years pass differently now. Emotional exhaustion accumulates quietly. People adapt to stress for so long that eventually they stop noticing how disconnected they've become from themselves. And adaptation is dangerous in that way. Human beings can normalize almost anything: loneliness, burnout, numbness, isolation, if it continues long enough. That's part of why emotional numbness is so confusing. Most people expect psychological suffering to feel dramatic. They expect breakdowns, obvious sadness, obvious pain. But often the deeper problem is the absence of feeling altogether. You stop reacting to things the way you once did. The highs become flatter. The future feels emotionally distant. Even memories begin feeling like they happened to somebody else. And that creates a strange kind of grief, because sometimes you are not grieving another person. You are grieving yourself, the version of you that used to feel more alive, more hopeful, more emotionally connected to the future. And that grief is difficult to explain because technically your life may still appear functional from the outside, which makes people feel guilty for struggling. They think, nothing terrible happened to me, so why do I feel this way? But the human nervous system does not only respond to catastrophe, it also responds to chronic emotional strain, long periods of uncertainty, repeated disappointment, constant comparison, suppressed emotion, isolation, psychological fragmentation. Those experiences change people slowly. Carl Jung believed that much of human suffering comes from becoming separated from parts of ourselves we have rejected, neglected, or buried in order to survive. And modern people do this constantly. They suppress vulnerability to appear strong, suppress emotion to remain productive, suppress uncertainty because they feel pressured to appear confident. Eventually, the performance becomes so continuous that they no longer know which parts of themselves are authentic anymore. And that's exhausting. Not physical exhaustion, existential exhaustion. The exhaustion of carrying a version of yourself that no longer feels fully real. I think social media intensifies this problem dramatically. People are now exposed to endless performances of certainty, beauty, success, discipline, confidence, happiness, and psychologically, that creates a distorted relationship with ordinary human struggle. Everyone begins feeling behind. Behind financially, behind emotionally, behind socially, behind physically. And when people constantly feel behind, they stop experiencing life naturally. They start monitoring themselves from the outside. That's why so many people today feel emotionally detached from their own existence. They are no longer fully living their lives. They are observing themselves living, constantly evaluating, constantly comparing, constantly questioning whether they are becoming enough. And over time, that kind of self-consciousness fractures identity. because human beings require psychological stability to feel internally coherent. You need moments where you can simply exist without performing, without optimizing, without proving your worth. But modern life rarely allows that. Everything becomes measurable. Your appearance, your career, your productivity, your relationships, your social status. Even healing itself becomes performative now. And eventually, the mind begins asking a dangerous question. If I remove all the roles I perform for other people, who am I underneath them? That question unsettles people because sometimes they genuinely don't know anymore, especially after painful transitions, breakups, failures, career collapse, burnout, loneliness, growing older, losing friendships, watching your expectations for life slowly change. Those experiences force identity to reorganize itself psychologically. And while transformation is necessary, it rarely feels inspiring while it's happening. Most transformation feels confusing, uncomfortable, lonely. You spend long periods existing between versions of yourself, no longer fully attached to who you were, but not yet capable of becoming whoever you're evolving into. That psychological space is deeply disorienting. And I think that's why nostalgia has become so emotionally powerful for modern people. People revisit old songs, old messages, old photographs, old places, not simply because the past was better, but because the past feels emotionally complete. The past feels understandable. You know who you were there. You know what mattered to you there. There's comfort in that certainty. But adulthood complicates identity. You begin realizing that life is not a straight path toward clarity. Sometimes growth actually dismantles certainty. You outgrow ambitions. You lose parts of yourself. You question beliefs that once felt permanent. And psychologically, that can feel like losing your foundation entirely. But maybe that feeling is not always evidence that something is wrong. Maybe it's evidence that something inside you is changing. Because people often assume growth should feel empowering immediately. But many forms of psychological growth initially feel like confusion, like emptiness, like instability. An old structure collapses before a new one fully forms. And during that transition, people often misinterpret transformation as failure. They think, I'm losing myself, when sometimes what's actually happening is the false versions are falling away. And that process can be painful, because every identity, even unhealthy ones, provides familiarity. Human beings become attached to familiar suffering, familiar roles, familiar patterns. So when life begins removing those patterns, the nervous system experiences uncertainty as danger, even when growth is occurring underneath it. That's why healing is rarely linear. And it's also why people become impatient with themselves during periods of psychological transition. They expect clarity too quickly. They expect certainty too quickly. But meaningful transformation usually happens beneath conscious awareness for a long time before external life catches up to it. You see this constantly in people rebuilding themselves after emotional collapse. For a while, nothing appears different externally. They still feel uncertain, still feel exhausted, still question themselves. But internally, deeper psychological structures are slowly reorganizing. Values change, priorities change, emotional tolerance changes. The way they understand suffering changes, and eventually, they begin responding to life differently, more honestly, more consciously, less performatively. Not because pain magically improves people, but because confronting reality sincerely changes people. And maybe that's where you are right now. Not broken, not failing, not permanently lost. Just in the uncomfortable process of becoming psychologically unfamiliar to yourself, while another version slowly emerges underneath the confusion. And that takes time, more time than most people expect. But if you remain honest with yourself, if you resist the temptation to become cynical, if you continue participating in your life even while feeling disconnected from it, something important begins happening. You slowly stop trying to return to your old self and begin understanding the person you are becoming. And that understanding changes everything.